Look at this political cartoon from the early 1900s. It depicts the Standard Oil monopoly as a massive octopus, wrapping its tentacles around the steel, copper, and shipping industries. On May 15, 1911, the United States Supreme Court decided to kill the beast. They declared the company an illegal monopoly and ordered its total destruction. But the execution of Standard Oil yielded a completely counterintuitive result. The legal ruling designed to ruin John D. Rockefeller mathematically multiplied his wealth, minting him as the first confirmed billionaire in human history. How does a single citizen engineer an economic engine so dense, so perfectly fortified, that taking a federal sledgehammer to it only makes him richer? The story starts in the dirt. In 1859, the Pennsylvania oil strike triggered a chaotic rush for black gold. As you can see in this photograph of a crowded hillside covered in rudimentary wooden derricks, drilling for oil was a massive, highly inefficient gamble. Most men poured their life savings into the ground and lost everything. Rockefeller despised gambles. Raised by a con artist father who posed as a deaf-mute beggar to swindle farmers, John learned early that trust was a weakness. Instead, he found absolute certainty in numbers. As a teenager, he meticulously recorded every penny he earned and spent in a small red book he called Ledger A. Watching the chaos in Pennsylvania, Rockefeller realized a critical truth. The leverage in the energy boom didn't belong to the men guessing where the oil was buried. It belonged to the people controlling the bottleneck, the refineries that turned crude oil into usable kerosene. At 25 years old, Rockefeller decided to take total control of that bottleneck. He forced his older business partner into a private auction for their shared refinery. He bid $72,500, an astronomical sum for the time, willing to push the price until he was either bankrupt or the sole owner. His partner surrendered. With complete ownership secured, Rockefeller set his sights on the entire wild energy sector. He would conquer it not by drilling blind, but by applying cold, mathematical precision to every drop of oil. He started by weaponizing extreme efficiency. At the time, refining was incredibly wasteful. Competitors dumped toxic sludge, gasoline, and tar straight into the rivers. Rockefeller bought his own forests, built his own kilns to make barrels, and hired chemists to turn that toxic waste into highly profitable lubricating oil and paraffin wax. His obsession with waste bordered on the pathological. He once demanded a factory use exactly 39 drops of solder to seal a kerosene tin, because 40 was a waste and 38 caused leaks. Across millions of tins, that single drop saved a fortune. To scale this operation, he built a cartel. The nation's railroads were in a brutal death spiral, slashing rates to steal business from each other. Rockefeller offered them a lifeline, a guaranteed 60 carloads of oil every single day, rain or shine. In exchange, he demanded a secret alliance. This diagram illustrates the mechanics of that alliance, an arrangement known as the drawback. When a rival factory shipped oil, they paid the railroad their standard fee, but the railroad then secretly funneled a percentage of that rival's cash straight into a Standard Oil vault. Rockefeller used this hidden cash flow to systematically drain his competitors. During the Cleveland massacre, he invited rivals to his office and showed them the math. He proved he was making money off their shipments and calmly offered them standard stock or cash to surrender. If they refused, they went bankrupt. Rockefeller engineered the supply chain so effectively that his competitors were entirely subsidizing his growth. Every barrel they shipped brought him one step closer to swallowing them whole. The surviving independent oilmen realized they were trapped on Rockefeller's railroads. In a desperate bid for survival, they pooled their resources to build an independent 110-mile pipeline, aiming to pump oil directly to the coast and bypass his cartel entirely. Rockefeller responded with total starvation. He bought up thin strips of land directly across the pipeline's intended path, tying up construction in trespassing lawsuits. He dispatched teams to sabotage the lines and bribed local officials to pull permits. When the independent companies finally went bankrupt from the delays, Rockefeller bought their finished pipeline for pennies on the dollar. He extended this tactic to every layer of the industry. If a rival managed to find an alternate shipping route, Rockefeller bought the independent manufacturers who made the white oak barrels. He bought the warehouses. He bought the chemical plants producing the acid required to treat the oil. This strategy, vertical integration, meant that even if a rival successfully pulled crude oil from the ground, they couldn't store it, refine it, or transport it without paying Rockefeller for the privilege. By 1879, he owned 90. Rockefeller had effectively built an invisible corporate ghost. He could dictate the physical realities of the American economy from a single desk, entirely insulated from the local laws designed to stop him. As his wealth approached 1.5% of the entire American economy, the stress of running the empire began to eat him alive. Rockefeller developed alopecia, losing all his hair and eyelashes, and his nervous system deteriorated to the point where he survived on a diet of crackers and milk. While he hid inside his estate, a journalist named Ida Tarbell spent 2 years painstakingly mapping the hidden paper trail of his empire. Her father had been ruined by the Standard Oil machine, and she hunted down discarded employees and secret railroad contracts to prove the ghost existed. Tarbell's explosive reporting not only detailed his ruthless supply chain tactics, it also exposed his father's dark history as a bigamist on the run. The public hatred reached a boiling point, providing President Theodore Roosevelt the political ammunition required to launch a massive antitrust investigation. For the first time in his life, the bookkeeper who tracked every variable was entirely paralyzed, completely at the mercy of the federal court system. The Supreme Court's order shattered Standard Oil into 34 distinct companies. The public cheered, assuming the giant was dead. But Rockefeller hadn't lost his ownership. He simply retained his massive share of stock in all 34 newly independent pieces. The breakup perfectly coincided with a massive shift in technology. The invention of the automobile abruptly transitioned the global market away from kerosene lamps and directly into the gasoline age. Freed from the legal shackles and public scrutiny of the single Standard Oil name, the value of those individual fragmented stocks exploded. Rockefeller's personal net worth crossed the $1 billion mark. The empire he built was so structurally sound, so deeply embedded in the veins of the nation, that the government's final, desperate attempt to destroy it became the most profitable event of his life.